Welcome, everyone. Today is May 15th, 2019, and I'm excited to have Dr. Caroline Minsky. She's a Fielding alum, and she'll be sharing with us some research that she has done, as well as having a discussion around successful coaching outcomes for leadership self-efficacy. She'll be defining all of that. I'm really excited to have Caroline, and I'm Dr. Terry Hildebrandt. I'm the director of the evidence-based coaching program at Fielding, and also the coaching concentration in our PhD and EDD programs. So welcome, Caroline. And
thank you. Thank you very much, Terry.
I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
All right, well, I'll do a little introduction, and then I want to get right into the presentation, and I'll share my screen. Hello there, Rosa. The first thing I wanted to say that is in my practice of over 25 plus years in coaching and consulting and organizational development, I have always had the passion of knowing what motivation is about and understanding what goal setting is about. So I was also sometimes perplexed when my clients would get stuck on a particular goal. You may have had this experience as well if you're coaching, and or with yourself, you know, why do I get stuck on certain goals? So I'm very happy when I had the opportunity as a scholar to be with Fielding Graduate University and in my dissertation to really get a feel for the theory under the practice, to find out what goal setting was about and to be able to ask those questions around social cognitive theory, around motivational theory, and around goal setting theory. So whether you're a coach or just curious about coaching, I think you'll find this dissertation research will shed some light on what happens behind the scenes. So give me a moment and let me share the screen with you and make sure I can do this. All right.
We see it just fine.
You're okay? We're good? So without further ado, the foundation for this research is that executive coaching can positively affect self-efficacy so that leaders can accomplish their goals to enhance organizational change. So we begin with the black box. And for all that has been done, what do we know about coaching? We know it can work, but do we know why it works? So what is that invisible stuff, that substance in the mind of the coaches? And I'm going to just close me out because it's distracting me. The research question that we begin with: what are the strategies that executive coaches use to build self-efficacy in relation to positive goal accomplishment in their clients? I want to begin at the beginning with Bandura and social cognitive theory and the self-efficacy definition. And I want to call your attention to action required to produce given attainments. What that means is that self-efficacy is task specific. So I had a client, a leader, who had complete confidence in the ability to manage the department, financial responsibilities, managing the budget. But when it came to bargaining or asking for a raise, it just wasn't happening for this person. So Malone had said that executive coaching allowed, excuse me while I'm getting warmed up here, pushing buttons. All right. Self-efficacy enhancement guidelines. So we know from Bandura that mastery experiences, modeling, verbal persuasion, and physiological state were important in building self-efficacy. We look at mastery experiences and think about what you do with your clients. You help them think about their accomplishments. Modeling would be looking at others like themselves. Verbal persuasion is actually coaching or suggestion. And physiological state has to do with the anxiety that we feel, the stress that may be at hand and may hold us at a loss for that confidence needed at that particular time for that particular task. I like to say that coaches have the Yoda factor, and they play that important part in the enhancement of self-efficacy in their clients in order to improve goal-setting outcomes. For example, when I had a large clientele of career coaching assignments, I would, and some of you probably know this, use PAR, P-A-R, problem, action, result, to get them thinking about their successes and how they could achieve confidence in talking about their successes, and do that. I would do that one-on-one. In a classroom situation, when you look at your clients and when you look at your or your students in the class, once you've gone through this PAR process, problem, action, result, you can see the difference in their faces. You can see the difference in their body language and the confidence that they have, even though their bosses forgot to pat them on the back for it, or they forgot the accomplishment. You can see that self-efficacy being built, and I call that the Yoda factor. I had one of my participants in this research said that when a person I'm coaching can see the value of their own development and the growth, that gives them the courage that they need to get out of their comfort zone. So I want to get right into the research summary, just a little bit about methodology. This was a qualitative study that utilized a semi-structured interview method with 20 executive coaches. The sample contained independent external coaches who work with executive level leaders, and thematic analysis was the method for identifying themes and reporting the underlying patterns within the data. The coaching process. So the first question, coaches were asked, what are the key steps that you think are important when you are specifically in a goal-setting session with your clients? Clarity and meaning and the wording, clarifying the meaning and wording of the goal was most important, more so than having a model. They were asked about the models like the SMART goals and the GROW model, and they felt that the clarification rather than using the model was the important part. Although as you look down, we talk about accountability and ownership, setting the action steps, looking at the future state, written record of commitment, and checking on the reality, checking on the environment. So these are the most important steps, which actually reminded me of SMART goals. So the findings, as far as the next question, asked about barriers to goal setting and strategies that they use to overcome the barriers. Lack of confidence, lack of clear goals, resisting change were the top three. And the coaching techniques that they use were pretty much asking questions, listening, somatic techniques, basic coaching, brainstorming, assigning homework, challenging assumptions. So these basic coaching techniques that we all use. The study confirmed what's actually been noted by Kilberg, that the most frequently used skill by coaches is asking questions followed by listening. And that this is what you'll see in the coach practice literature, what's called the precision tools in the coach's toolbox. So it also confirmed the ICF core coaching competencies. So this is what they said. This is the data, the quotation from, the coaches. Did you hear what I said to you? What's showing up for you? Good, bad, or indifferent? I'm hearing it. Are you hearing it? And it kind of just goes back to, as we said, good, solid coaching, asking powerful questions. And that is exactly the words of two of the coaches. Strategies that build self-efficacy. So next, the thematic analysis moves from the general coaching strategies used for overcoming barriers to the specific strategies used to enhance self-efficacy. The words on the left are as described by the participants, words that they use such as gaining perspective, acknowledging skills and competencies, reviewing past success, social experiments, and change models. On the right, you're going to see the underlying theory that arose from each of those statements. And what I'm going to do next is go through one-on-one the theories and the data to give you a better picture of how the theory underlines the practice. So the first one is gaining perspective. And you may recognize some of these famous names: Heifetz, Grasso, Olinsky, Keegan, and Leahy. And the wording of the coaches pull them up to the balcony. This is what you're going to see in Heifetz's book. This is what you're going to see in the talk about adaptive leadership if you read the book and read the theory. What they are saying in gaining perspective, they being the coaches in this research, what they use specifically are uncovering assumptions, changing frame of reference, and reflective thinking in this process of gaining perspective. Appreciative inquiry would be acknowledging skills and competencies. So a key underlying this is there's a strong positive response that allows people to work towards goals that are inspiring and energizing. They are remembering their best self. They're finding clarity and help in the desired future. So the coaching applications of discovering and remembering the best self in the desired future are what you'll also see in the literature. Acknowledging skills and competencies, the tools of the coaches, looking at what's working, again, that reflective language, and celebrating success. And I just want to make a note about celebrating success. One of the things I've recently made important to add in my practice is that the beginning of each of our coaching sessions, we will go over the accomplishments of the previous week. So we will, in a little way, celebrate their success of the previous week before they came into the coaching session. Another thing that I'll do is at the end of a coaching assignment, we'll go out to lunch and celebrate. So very important. Are there any questions at this point? Keep going?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't see any in the room so far. So
Okay.
why don't we go ahead and continue?
Okay, onward. Reviewing past success goes back to social cognitive theory. And the coaches in this study specifically talked about reviewing past successes, talking about accomplishments. Verbal persuasion is a term that underlines the positive feedback and intersects also with appreciative inquiry. Modeling others or physiological state were not mentioned in this research, although it did come up in the pilot study, not specifically to this question. So mostly reviewing past success from this study. And social experiments. Now, that was a new terminology for me, I must admit, when I started talking to the coaches. And it comes from adult learning. And I actually called it homework. When I am assigning homework to my clients, I might say something like, why don't you prepare to ask for a question during a board meeting? Or why don't you have lunch and work out your listening skills? Go have lunch with the partner or a coworker, and you can practice on your listening skills. So these are the social experiments that you may call homework in your practice, and just trying them. And this is another coach quote, again, having her go out and try those things. She just found that if she just did those things she didn't think that she could do, it worked. It really worked. And he goes on, I can't remember a time when it didn't work. It worked every single time. So the foundation for the social experiments would definitely be adult learning. And if you want to call it homework, go ahead and call it homework. So intentional change is one of the change models that was mentioned by the coaches. And intentional change theory describes certain steps for producing change and moving through those steps. And all of these coaches included at least 4 of the steps in their descriptions as a way to help the client. The coaches that used ICT model spoke about helping the client identify ideal self, and ideal self is the most important foundation with this particular theory. Immunity to change theory was the second model that was suggested by the coaches, and the underlying theory or the specific tasks or specific processes or tools would be identifying competing commitments or discovering what they're doing or not doing, and then uncovering why they persist with the behaviors that keep them from getting what they want. So in Keegan and Leahy's Immunity to Change book is a map. This is very much of a simplification of what the process is, but understanding that map is another way of helping clients move through their self-efficacy and gain confidence in accomplishing the goals when they get stuck. So by asking executive coaches to reflect on their practices and strategies, this research uncovered a new model that advances the understanding, the value of evidence-based coaching. So in the drum, you'll see the underlying theories, moving toward the actual steps from taking a balcony view to helping the client to change through positive goal accomplishment. So the executive coaches that utilized adaptive leadership strategies build their clients' self-efficacy by helping them gain perspective and challenging assumptions and reframing. The strategy of appreciative inquiry offers the opportunity to celebrate strengths, successes, build self-efficacy, and have positive goal attainment. Acknowledging skills and positive feedback helps the client confirm competencies and gain confidence. Moving down to social cognitive theory, providing clients with the opportunity to build self-efficacy by reviewing past successes, modeling others, positive feedback, helping them move from a point of success. Adult learning theories, providing the clients with ongoing opportunities for practice and reflection, social experiments, and the two change theories that were mentioned. Intentional change theory and immunity to change. So coaches that use these strategies in their practice can learn more about the underlying theories, help them solidify their knowledge. And I recommend when you use these techniques, to ask for feedback, to see if these strategies ring true with your clients, to ask what worked, what didn't work. In my own practice, I do send a survey at the end of our meeting, when our meetings close, to see what is working for them, to get their feedback. I recommend that coaches do keep track of your coaching results. Begin to formulate what's working, what strategies are working for you, what doesn't work, what does work. And basically, that is the gist of the research. I know I kind of sped through that. Conclusions by asking, it's really strange when you don't have people asking questions and it's not interactive, Terry. By asking executive coaches to reflect on their practices and strategies, we uncovered a new model that advances the understanding and the value of evidence-based coaching. So it's all about theory under the practice, confirming the importance of the ICF coaching skills, definitely having the requirement of theory-based coaching strategies in coaching certificate training, and then presenting a wide range of evidence-based strategies that coaches utilize with their clients to facilitate self-efficacy and goal achievement. So can we open it up?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Carol Ann, for your overview of your research and findings and model. I'm going to start us out with a question. So you mentioned a lot of different theories here that can go into and underpin coaching. For a new coach that is coming into the field, how do you recommend they get started in understanding which of these theories apply at the right time to any particular coaching engagement?
That is a good question, Terry. First of all, to a new coach coming into the field, I would certainly recommend the basics, the active listening, reflection, and asking questions and learning how to ask questions. What you can look at is, practicing some of the items here, because if you are working with a client and you say, okay, perhaps you're on the balcony, looking down at the audience, looking at your life, take that reflection. You would know that is coming from adaptive leadership because of the wording, the balcony view. So reading through the theories and then connecting them. Right here is a good start. Okay, there's a list here that you can change, go back from the research that I've done. That would be one way to utilize this.
Okay.
So, quick question to build from that, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is Theo. Are those in any sort of order? Are those activities taking a balcony view? Like, did you hear that most often from the coaches you interviewed?
They are in order of the underlying theory, not in order of the amount of or the frequency of answers. Does that help?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, the order here is the order that goes with the theory. And as you'll see, definitely reflecting or frame of reference kind of goes with everything. Okay, a lot of the series, so I didn't keep repeating that. And we'll see it if we go back. It came up in the wording of the research under gaining perspective, but it also comes up under acknowledging skills and competencies. So it's a basic tool that coaches could utilize, and it can be used in a couple of theories. It can relate back to a couple of theories.
So Susan, I see you have a question. Would you like to ask it, or would you prefer if I did?
Sorry, I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
We do hear you.
Yeah, so thank you. So Carolyn, I just have a question for you. So there's this theory that seems to be very popular right now of leading from behind as a coach. So not getting ahead of the coach, not advising, suggesting. Do you have any thoughts on that or opinions on that?
Who is doing the advising or suggesting? The coach?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so coaching is generally guiding and asking questions. Advising is offering advice. Well, it's kind of redundant, but giving advice then turns into consulting, right? Or advising. So it's different from coaching. I think if you're clear with your client what you're doing, clear that I'm moving into a consulting role at the moment. If you'd like advice on this, we can do some brainstorming and work through what would be a solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas coaching is more, those guidance questions and bringing up the ideas of the coach, not offering advice.
And I guess I'm asking this question as a budding coach. How difficult is it to stay leading from behind?
Very. It is. I will be honest with you. It is very difficult. It is easier for me personally when I'm doing career development coaching because there is the expectation of advice there. Obviously, if you're not skilled at advising someone how to do their resume or advising someone how to pick their target market, you're not considered a good career coach.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
It's a tough line.
I would think so. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Caroline, I had a question about most of these theories, adaptive learning, appreciative inquiry, etc. seem to be more process-oriented, which seems to also be very useful from a coaching perspective, because coaches do bring a container or a process that enables the coachee to then do their deep work of reflection and learning and setting goals, etc. Would you agree with that statement, that these are more on the process development side in terms of holding that space for clients?
Absolutely, yes, and helping them process through. You're utilizing the underlying theories with the specific techniques to help them process through their particular situation, their question, their problem, their goal.
And I'm just wondering, from your own perspective, maybe moving it a little bit to practice and your own practice, which of these theories do you find yourself using the most?
Oh, that is a good question. Adult learning, I would say, because adults learn when they need to, and they come to you as a coach with a particular need, so you can follow in that direction. We mentioned homework, social experiments, and helping them brainstorm and move forward in that way. Social cognitive theory, because of the self-efficacy process and confidence, helping point out accomplishments, helping the client move through their different confidence levels with whatever you can provide for them. And change theory, falling back on change theory, because when you start to see why clients are stuck, there are alternate commitments that they have. There's a reason why they're not moving forward, and really understanding what that reason is what's of utmost important to get them over that block to move forward.
Mm-hmm. I'm also curious, and this has been something that I've debated over the years, how much of the theory to actually explain to the client versus just having it in the back of my mind, and almost like a physician. Physician doesn't exactly explain every little procedure, every disease or dynamic to a patient.
Absolutely, you would bore them. No, I do not go into explaining theory with clients. No, I don't even tell them what I'm telling them.
Mhm.
I don't tell them I'm doing a balcony view with you now. Usually it's just get up above, and look below, or how could you look at this in a different way. I wouldn't say, now I'm giving you positive feedback and that's from appreciative inquiry.
Yeah.
Just do it, right? Just do it.
Do it. Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah.
Do you ever find it sometimes useful to explain the theory? Like, for example, I do sometimes bring an appreciative inquiry and teach it, do a little mini teaching,
Mm-hmm.
because the 5D or 4D model, whichever one you're using, is so powerful that the process is something that I occasionally will teach out executive, and so that they can do it on their own later, or use it with their teams. But I'm just wondering, have you ever found some of these useful to explain to clients?
Well, as you just described it, explaining it as a way to use with your team, or introducing it as a training model,
Mm-hmm.
is an excellent way to introduce it. Appreciative inquiry especially, and adult learning as well. You might explain, some of the processes there in a training.
Yeah.
Change theory behind the scenes with coaches is good education, is definitely worth an educational piece in any kind of coaching program. And for coaches to go through the whole mapping, the immunity to change mapping is actually, I think that is a certification course, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
The immunity to change.
And we use it as one of our foundation theories and our fielding program as well. Absolutely.
Yes, Yes, it's good. It's great to understand that, and you can take the client through the mapping, and teach them how to do that. So that, what is that? Teach them how to fish so that they will feed themselves for the rest of their lives. You know, teach them that process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm also curious, there are a lot of coach training programs out on the market today which don't emphasize theory at all. They
Mm-hmm.
maybe they'll, talk about a model or what I would call tips and tricks or, tools for sure. But, the way you described some of these theories earlier, I often find that not every program offers that level of depth. So I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, what's the advantage really of having that deeper understanding of theory in terms of being a better coach to really have more impact on clients?
Well, for one thing, like I said in the beginning, when I had my practice, I was, very passionate about goal setting. And when my clients got stuck, I was very frustrated that I couldn't help them. So for one thing, the understanding that I gained as a scholar, the scholarly work that I've done, the learning, it was like an aha moment. Oh, that's why this is happening.
Hmm.
That's how I can help this person move forward and not be stuck. So just that appreciation of the coach for the process that underlies, that makes them understand what's going on, I think will, if you just sell it that way, is, stop being frustrated and learn learn what the heck you're doing here.
Hmm.
What is the underlying theory and how can you use that to help your clients? Because it's the understanding of the coach, it's the confidence level of the coach, if you will,
Hmm.
that they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is your confidence as a coach was increased by being able to understand those deeper dynamics that were at play with your clients.
Absolutely, absolutely made a difference in the time and the coaching that I did when I was before my dissertation, my PhD, my studies at Fielding, to my understanding, and then going back into my coaching practice and using different skills. I mean, a lot of the coaching programs will teach you the toolkit and the techniques, and then you practice the techniques. And then, hopefully you get good at practicing the techniques. But if you don't have a container to, tie it together and see that underlying theory, there's something missing. There's just, you're not, I don't think it's complete.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's just my opinion, but
No, we're looking for your opinion here for
yeah,
sure because of the research you've done.
yeah.
So, do you think that some of these are more effective than others in specifically leadership coaching? Do you have some go-to theories that tend to come up again and again personally?
Okay, if we talk about, adaptive leadership, I think that's something that is my go-to again and again. I always go back to social cognitive theory. It's my foundation around self-efficacy and talking about accomplishments. Believe it, it's such a simple conversation that you can have with a leader, but it is very transformative when they start thinking about their accomplishments. In a recent work that I did with an executive director of a nonprofit, that's when I started this process of, in the beginning, going through accomplishments. And she was floored at what she had accomplished in the previous week. She didn't realize, she knew she was busy and her calendar was full and she did a lot of stuff. But when she looked at what she had accomplished, it was just a difference in her personality, a difference in her conversation. Um, there was one goal that she was pushing for, and she finally achieved it in one of her meetings. And one of her board directors sent her an email congratulating her, and she sent me an email, Carol. she thanked me, and she said I did a great job. So she finally, that I can't say enough about the mastery experiences and leaders really understanding their accomplishments.
Yeah. So I am curious about that, just to go a little bit deeper. So this idea of asking what's worked before and having them reflect on their accomplishments, what do you think's going on there from a psychological perspective that really enables that to work? I guess I'm asking you to go a little deeper into the theory itself.
Ooh, okay. Um,
And I'm just curious about your own opinion about that, specifically around social cognitive theory.
so if you go back, so go back to Bandura, and that is the beginning, the foundation for social cognitive theory, and all of the work that was done around mastery experiences. So the positive at seeing what you've done in the past is what obviously brings up that happy feeling, the change, moving forward.
So there's a little bit of neuroscience here, it sounds like, that you're bringing forward.
Positive psychology, yeah. The necessary changes in your thought process. What you put out there is what you believe. What you're looking at in the past is what you're believing about yourself that you can achieve in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that positive psychology underlying that. Yeah, I would say there's neuroscience under there.
Yeah, it sounds like you may be producing some positive neurotransmitters like oxytocin or other things going on when you reflect on these past successes and begin to, believe in yourself and being willing to maybe go forward and try it again.
And try it again and again and again. And unfortunately, our brains are like Velcro for negative thoughts. We just keep going. We just keep pulling in those negative, Velcro for negative thoughts and Teflon for positive thoughts. So we have to keep reliving those positive experiences and those positive accomplishments to really convince ourselves that we can move forward with confidence.
That's great.
And that's where the coach comes in.
So we have another question from the audience. Lisa, would you like to come online and ask your question?
Yes, sure. Thank you. And this relates to the comments that you just mentioned about positivity and reflection. But how do you approach strategies working with clients who may experience imposter syndrome and potentially culturally based concerns surrounding identity and expectations? So maybe they're not in the most inclusive or encouraging environment, or any strategies that you found worked with those clients?
Okay, I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing.
Caroline, I can repeat it.
Say that again. Yes.
Since she wrote it, Lisa wrote it in the chat room too. If you want to click on chat, but I'll read it as well. It says, how do you approach strategies working with clients who may experience imposter syndrome? So I think that's the first question. And also potentially culturally based concerns about surrounding identity and expectations. So if you were going to run into someone who's dealing with the imposter syndrome, how would you approach that?
Okay, the imposter syndrome. I don't deserve to be here, right? I've done, I got this job by luck.
Or I'm a fraud. Yeah.
I'm a fraud. Is something that is actually quite natural. Most people come to that at some point in their lives. Again, you could look at what have you done in the past that qualify you for this position, and point out accomplishments, jobs, experiences, specific skills. And all of these things are concrete examples of why you deserve to be here. So it's almost like building building the history with that individual as to, what your accomplishments and why you got hired and why you're here. So that would be the beginning, of working through that process. And then going deeper would be having a better understanding of why they don't believe that about themselves. So that would be getting into deeper understanding around identity. So you bring up identity, perhaps that is part of the issue of why they don't believe that they deserve to be where they are. So that's another probing questions and reflecting and reframing to go through. And then the cultural part, it depends on, what obviously what their beliefs are around their culture, and depending on what cultures you're thinking about and what the underlying beliefs are, working through those one at a time, seeing if you can reframe and seeing if you can find a particular incident or a particular time when something that they did actually worked, or how something that they could do in the future could work.
So, Lisa, did we answer your question? It sounded like there may have been a second part, which was more about a little bit of an environment which may not be quite so supportive for certain individuals. Is that true, Lisa? Maybe you can come back online and clarify.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, you did answer my question as well. And also, this question comes from maybe individuals who may not be in the most supportive or encouraging or inclusive environments, or maybe seen as different initially from colleagues overall, or feeling isolated.
Yeah. Is it possible to get out of that environment? Sometimes the change that you have to make is you're removing yourself from the environment. That would be one possibility, making a career change and moving to a different environment that works.
It's interesting that, Lisa, you brought this up. Later this month, we're going to be actually dealing directly with this issue. So we're going to have a panel discussion on using coaching for inclusion and diversity. And I'll be talking more about that at the end of the call. But I do recommend you dial in for that. We'll have our Chief Diversity Officer at Fielding, Tomas Leal, along with Christopher Hicks, who's also a Fielding graduate, and Shirley Engelmeyer, the president and founder of Inclusion, Inc., who has extensive experience in this space, will be online. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot more coming about that specific topic and how coaching can really help.
Sounds great. So any other, go ahead.
I was just saying.
How did you like the Yoda factor?
That's a great metaphor.
Without specifically any infringements.
That's great. So any other questions from the audience at this point? We just had a comment, great insights. Thank you, Dr. Minsky.
Thank you. Yeah, I really, would recommend that, coaches test their techniques, see what is working. Send a survey at the end of your client engagement. Ask for feedback. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? What could be, what could be changed? Get a feel, even if you can in the present moment, as you're saying, I think you're quiet. Can you tell me what's going on? How did that last conversation work? What's going on for you? So you can do it in the present moment. And I also highly recommend keeping track of and reflecting on your own practice as to what's working and what's not working.
Great, thank you. Just had one final question. I was looking at your change models, specifically the intentional change theory. Could you say a little bit more about ICT and how that works?
ICT, this is one of
I think
I
it's the
guess it's,
previous slide, I believe.
I'm sorry, this immunity.
There we go.
Yeah. The intentional change theory, the ideal self, looking, it's a process, really. It's a long process that is a little bit more complicated in getting to the ideal self through the personal vision. And one of the things I do first is start with the personal vision in order to then go back to the ideal self. Um, and then comparison of the real to ideal. So that also may be helpful with that previous question, with that identity and that imposter syndrome. We could go back to that and use that model. The learning plan, and then it's just the rest of it is learning plan, experimentation, kind of like that social experiments. And then trusting relationships, it's helpful if there are mentors in the picture, or if a mentor can be recommended, that could be continued with a helpful relationship and a trusting relationship, so that there's ongoing. And it is a long process.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to ask you for your final closing remarks, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up. So any advice? I know coaches don't normally give advice, but from a scholar practitioner perspective, what advice do you have for anyone who's interested in going deeper into theory and how it informs practice and coaching?
I would do one at a time. I would just go slow. Let me go back to, if you just wanted to start with these 5, see what is most interesting to you. If you can relate back from your passion, for example, social cognitive theory, my passion was goal setting. That's where the theory, that's where the literature was, that's where the search was. So starting with your passion and looking into, researching what is the literature out there, and then just one at a time, just tackle it one at a time until you get an understanding for what really resonates with you, and then go on to the next one. If you're doing research, you have to do a literature review, so that kind of pushes you into that, and maybe you need to take that step to commit to doing research, so that you commit to understanding the theory behind the practice. But start with your passion. Start with what you have the most questions about, and then tackle one. And once you get in, you'll absolutely see the other theories that are related, and you'll get more interested and more passionate about understanding the theory under the practice.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Minsky.
You're welcome.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your research, and as well as your wisdom and experience in using theory in coaching. And how can people get a hold of you if they have further questions?
I would say my email would be the best way. Let me get that back up here. So cminsky@cmaleadershipconsultants.com.
Great. Well, thank you very
Okay.
much.
And I have to put a plug in for my book. Check out focuswithdrc.com. My first book after the dissertation was Focus, Get What You Want Out of Life. And then my second book is the Focus Planning Journal. And of course, you can find out information about that on focuswithdrc.com.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
I'm very happy to have been able to spend this evening with you and the audience. Thank you again, Terry, for inviting me.
Great. And I look forward to further collaborations in the future. So we do have a few announcements that I'd like to just share with the group. Number one, we have an ongoing series of webinars like this one. And we also have our past webinars, including this one, that will be posted. And you can access them all through coach.fielding.edu, and that'll bring up our coaching program page, and you'll see here professional series webinars and thought leader series webinars. To understand our upcoming webinars, you can click on the EBC blog. And here you can see our upcoming next webinar is on May 29th. And I mentioned it earlier, using coaching to drive inclusion and diversity. So if you're interested in that particular topic, we invite you to come and hear from these 3 different scholars who will be sharing their experiences in the field, very practical perspectives on how coaching can really support creating more inclusive cultures and inclusive leadership. So I know all 3 of these folks will have a lot to share with us, and are credible leaders in this field. And after that, we'll have an ongoing series of webinars, both from the thought leader perspective, like Carol Ann brought today, and the professional series perspective, which is how can you use coaching in every field and every industry and every profession. You can also go back and watch our previous blogs on education and OD and executive leadership, and social change, etc. If you would like to join our community of practice, you can also go to coach.fielding.edu and click on Coaching Community of Practice. You can also reach this site directly at CCOP, which stands for Coaching Community of Practice.fielding.edu. And at the bottom of the page, you just click on the subscribe button. It'll bring up a short survey that'll allow you to have access to our base camp, where we post opportunities to learn and collaborate on an ongoing basis. So please check out our Coaching Community of Practice. It's open to anyone that is interested in the field of coaching and furthering their development and being part of the Fielding larger community. So again, thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars or at some of our face-to-face events, which you can also learn about by joining the Coaching Community of Practice. So have a great evening, and see you next time.
Thank you, Terry. Bye.
Bye for now.